of our speakers and guests and set the stage for a riveting afternoon of discussions. And now, I'd like to welcome to the stage our first speaker. Saad Toma is the General Manager of IBM Middle East and Africa. In his role, Saad is responsible for business operations, driving revenue growth, client satisfaction, and employee engagement across the Middle East, Africa, and Turkey. IBM has made significant investments in the Middle East and Africa's future through the development of local economies with a direct presence in 30 countries. IBM MEA has core capabilities in hybrid cloud, AI, blockchain, data security, and quantum computing, with global competency centers to research, facilities in South Africa and Kenya, and technical exploration centers to serve clients, governments, as well as the broader ecosystem. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Saad Toma.
Thank you.
Welcome, Saad. Great to have you here with us.
Thank you. Delighted to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
Now, let's start off by talking digitization. You know, most companies have been doing that, have been working towards that, but there are some who have been forced into it because of the pandemic. Now, what have you seen as the biggest challenges in the digital transformation journey of organizations in the Middle East, and how is IBM helping their clients to overcome them?
Yeah, so you are absolutely right. We have seen a tremendous acceleration in digital transformation or digitization across businesses and government institutions, especially during this COVID period. Which has really accelerated it. I mean, there's one study that touches on the e-commerce space where 10 years became 1 year. And that one is kind of natural for us to understand because it's all about us as human beings not being able to go to the offices or go shopping and having to do, or our kids having to study at home. So that forced an e-commerce type culture a lot faster than anticipated for many, many businesses. And I'm sure my colleagues to follow in these discussions will address some of this from maybe a retail perspective even. Now, for the digital acceleration, we do have a consulting arm in IBM that's fairly substantial. And I'll tell you right now, we did announce our results last year. The growth has been double digit. And the need from our clients, frankly, is hindered by the ability to satisfy it in terms of the capability and the skills and the knowledge that we could give them. And the areas, as you'd expect, are around business process transformation, around the IT that enables that business process, and it's about simplification, about the e-space. So how do I get to do more on my e-devices, whether it's a phone, an iPad, or whatever device people use, to do my day-to-day business, but optimize the business process while I do it. So it's more of an automation play, more of the use of latest technologies like hybrid cloud, like AI. You mentioned blockchain and data, the same thing here. So we're definitely seeing a major increase here. Now, what are we doing about it as IBM? We have a set of technologies that really are the foundation to what's required. Let's call it the infrastructure of what's required for the space in terms of software, hardware, and consulting assets. These assets help our clients go down that journey in a structured way, in an automated way, but very importantly underpinned by a very secure platform, because that's the other element that has accelerated during this period. The ability to have access to data from anywhere, as well as the amount of data, has also represented many, many challenges for our customers, albeit enterprises or government kind of institutions. So you could imagine a scenario of a healthcare provider who has gone through a digital journey. There are many wonderful examples in this country in many of the apps that we use on a day-to-day basis to either manage the vaccination status or the PCRs or general health of the citizen. And you could imagine how important and private that data is to you and I as citizens. So you can imagine the complexities, especially in a world that is major in change, where all of us, I think, have never seen in the last 2 years anything like it, and we never expected it. So companies like IBM have to step in and help, whether it's government institutions or companies, with that platform work and help them transform with speed, agility, but also very, very secure and robust as we do it.
That's absolutely vital, and you mentioned the privacy aspect of it. So, in terms of when we're talking about cybersecurity, where do you see that going? How can we, make our personal information even more secure? We've seen, those instances, where our information is being compromised. So what do we need to do to make sure that we safeguard that well?
Now, I'll start with the kind of the easier part, which is us as end users.
Yeah.
We have to do our part in terms of course, changing passwords and not sharing and so on. That's common sense. And whether you work for a company or a personal consumer, you do that. But actually, the hard part is the people who own these systems. For example, a bank with e-banking, as I mentioned, healthcare earlier. We have a philosophy of what's called zero trust security. Now, zero trust really says it's the what, the how, and the where, the when. So you've got to look at your data, and wherever it resides, wherever it comes from, you have to have a zero trust mentality. And typically the data is dispersed these days across multiple places. So namely things such as the public cloud, things such as the private cloud, that's where companies have it within their own firewall, if you will. And also something new, which is at the edge of the network. So now the network providers with 5G and the acceleration of speeds like 5G, the data now is residing closer to us, to the consumers. That does also represent a security threat. And with COVID-19, in the last 1 year, we've seen a massive acceleration of fraudulent attacks. Generally, they are financial criminals who do this for gain. And to give you an idea, the cost of each one of these in this region is actually 6.39 million per incident, US dollars. The global average, by the way, is about 4.25, 4.25. So actually, it's more costly here. And the cost is generally either loss of actual money, remediation, reputation, all these things combined. But there's been a massive acceleration in this area of fraudulent activity. And again, zero trust is the way to do it. It's all about preventative. And then the use of things such as artificial intelligence to predict, analyze, look at logs, behaviors, patterns, to detect and prevent and lock it. Yeah? Now, will mistakes happen? Yes, mistakes do happen. But then it's how do you react to those mistakes? What actions do you take and how fast you do it? And we've all read examples of these things happening. I mean, during COVID, as you all seen, there was an incident in the US around the oil pipe and what happened there. That was a ransomware attack, essentially withholding the production unless a big ransom was paid. And you can see what happened to the price of oil just because of that one incident around the globe. The price of oil just shot up. So we have a very, very robust practice. We actually have Saudi Arabia's first security operations center on the ground in Riyadh, supporting the country and their needs. And we have major operations as part of that fabric, which actually monitors billions of activities on a weekly basis, billions, with the B, not M, of activities. And we monitor, of course, with automation and artificial intelligence, again, to detect patterns and behaviors and then lock them down. So a lot of work is done behind the scenes. The actual users never know about it because attacks and incidents are happening as we speak in every country at a tremendous pace. Attacks to your phone right now that you're using, attacks to your business computer, attacks to your banking platforms. It's coming from multiple sources, and generally it's financially driven. It's all about people trying to steal or do fraudulent activities.
Now, let's talk about the capabilities of quantum computers to solve the complex problems that today's most powerful supercomputers simply cannot. So talk to us about how IBM aims to explore the applications of quantum computing to support big data, artificial intelligence, IoT, and more through strategic partnerships.
Yeah. We're very proud that we introduced the first quantum computer in 2016 and made a decision that it becomes an open platform. So through the cloud, you could actually access it, which has given researchers, universities, institutions, governments, labs, many companies, non-profit access to leverage that technology and do use cases. Right now we have the largest fabric of quantum computers around the globe with 20 different platforms around the globe, all connected. Quantum is interesting for those of you who love physics or chemistry or science, because we just reached, at the end of last year, the first time in our history where a quantum computer, which is based on really chemistry and physics, science, for the first time ever, we exceeded the physical possibility of silicon. So as you know, the usual megahertz and chips that we use, first time ever we exceeded it in our human history at 127 qubits, and the qubit is actually the measure of quantum computing power and how intensive it is. And this is called the IBM Eagle chip that was announced in 4Q last year. Coming up will be the 256 and the 500. Now you can imagine the incremental power. Now the good question is, what do you do with it? So the application usage ranged dramatically from the field of materials to chemistry to banking to healthcare. You imagine mapping the human genes or the protein, which have major ramifications to healthcare and what we do, what the future looks like. But imagine a journey where this gets commercialized, which we expect by 2025, there'll be a lot of commercialization of certain usage and applications. This compute power coupled with high-speed networks that we are seeing in the future is going to be a world that we've never seen before. Again, the time will tell. We certainly have declared that this is a leadership position we want to be in. We have seen the usage around the artificial intelligence space using quantum computers in certain use cases. We obviously do a lot of work ourselves with many of our clients around quantum, where we get commissioned to perform certain projects and activities with clients. The actual, let's call it the science of it, the research of it, has now, in my opinion, has become fully business. Yes, research will continue to do what they do really best at running these things at minus 270 degrees, which is where they need to be at, and how to make them smaller and more portable and transportable to be used by more companies. But we're seeing the business aspect of it now prevailing big time. And with many more, I call them use cases, people call them case studies, being used in multiple aspects and facets of for humanity going forward.
It's exciting to see the possibilities there. But, for tech giants like IBM, on the one side you've got the quantum computing, but also you play a really big role in increasing digital inclusion, particularly in countries where they're lagging behind. So talk to us about how you're doing that.
Yeah. No, and we've been in this space for a long time, starting even with the PTech program, which is a program for inner city kids who are, let's say, 16 years old and don't generally get the opportunity to get trained on the future skills. So our, let's call it, social responsibility as a company is to ensure that more children and more kids have the future skills where the world's going to go, which is alongside along the lines of what we discussed in the last 10 minutes or so. For example, with PTech, I'll tell you that I personally have been to northern India to one of the girls' schools that are part of PTech. PTech means we also provide funding for their laboratory training and some internships with us to take what they learn and apply it. And it was amazing. It was a school probably of at least 300 young girls were all there. And we took some demos and things for them to play with. So they were, for example, how do you computerize a little car that you have to build yourself and then have it run? And they did that in the time I was there. They gave a presentation of what they've learned. It's an amazing thing because it is taking a region that could potentially produce 100, 200 of young scientists. This happens to be a girls' school, so that's even more wonderful in my opinion, where there aren't enough women engineers in the world, as we know. But that will happen. We have examples from kids in Brooklyn and Manhattan where the same thing, we actually had them on stage at big IBM events. Now, besides that, we have a Digital Nations Africa program, which is again all about developers and coding. We have a program that we call 30 by 2030, and IBM's mission is to have 30 million people trained by 2030 on the future technologies. Now, some of those will, of course, be very beneficial to what we need in terms of skill and talent in the future, because the skill war and the talent war is actually very tough out there in terms of really good talent. But at the same time, there are some really bright and smart people who they need the opportunity, especially in our countries. And by the way, I also lived in Singapore prior to this role, so I also have a good feel of the ASEAN community and India, as I mentioned, India, China, as I mentioned. But again, people need to be given the opportunity. And these programs are just a significant investment. We actually have very amazing modules online where we provide the training, and we have a team that updates the courses, make them very relevant. So for example, around all the areas of digital transformation, and these young people could go through a school and access all that curricula for free. And they do. I mean, for the last 10 years, the numbers are actually in the millions of course access. And they get badges, certificates, they could put them on their CV. Now, imagine you're in a country in Africa and you have that desire and you do this work. This could land in a very different job profile versus business as usual. Just that extra skill and learning that you've captured. So again, a significant area for us. We do have a very strong CSR mission, but in terms of our corporate social responsibility, this is right at the center of it.
Yeah, it's amazing. All you need is just that opportunity, the resources being provided, and it changes someone's life trajectory and the communities as well. Absolutely. It's really extraordinary. We have questions coming in from the audience right now. William from the UK had a question about cybersecurity, which I think you've already answered, so I hope that was sufficient, William. Abdullah from Saudi Arabia has texted in. Please text in and with your questions. He asks, the technology that you've spoken about, how future-proof is it?
Well, if there's anything we've learned, so I've done 30 years plus in this field. I'm proud to say all with IBM. So I've seen us go from, let's call it the old silicon technology to quantum today. I've seen us go from, if some of you remember, the internet was nothing more than a fax machine back then. Oh. And some people call it a wooden fax machine, wooden box, to dial up to the small bandwidth and then spread. And even in Saudi Arabia, I mean, Abdullah probably knows, because I was in Saudi Arabia last week at the LEAP event, which is a fantastic technology event, very successful, first one ever in Saudi Arabia. The Wi-Fi speed in Saudi took Saudi from number 130 in the world to number 6. They did that in 2 years. COVID drove it back to digital transformation. So and they're very proud of it. I mean, it's a fantastic achievement. I mean, will we be staying here? No. I mean, this will only improve. I believe that what we've seen in the past, which was driven by something called Moore's Law. So Moore's Law has been going for over 30 years, which says the speed of computing and storage doubles every 2 years. And it's only slowed down by the physics of what you could accomplish. Now with quantum and the speed of networks and other discoveries, like even IBM joint venture with Samsung that produced the very thin wafer transistors, that's changing the world. And I think it will accelerate it further. Will it be ever future-proof and stop? I think not. I think we as humans, and if I look at our research labs and what they do, the amazing stuff, I think we'll continue. I personally didn't expect to see quantum in my career life. And it's here at probably the, fourth generation now? We started at, I think, 10 qubits, now 127 within 5 years. And I think within a year, there'll be the next one, doubling the speed. Didn't expect it.
Extraordinary. It really is. But let's talk about, the biggest changes in strategy for IBM, particularly as IBM, one of the world's biggest companies, is trying to cope with the pandemic, get through it, and, come out stronger as well.
Yeah. We made a very conscious decision that we'll continue to serve our clients like we've done for 110 years. And by the way, in this region, we've been, for example, in UAE over 40 years. We were in Saudi Arabia in 1947. The first computer in the region was an IBM computer at Aramco, supporting the Aramco early oil business. That was 70 years ago. We fully expect that our strategy will align to what we're seeing in the market. And if you look at the areas of business transformational services around the consulting world that we have, the very strong consulting capability we have, as well as key technologies such as data and AI. I talked about security, so I will not touch on that. Automation around hybrid cloud will continue. That's our strategy. Now let me touch on the two that I have not spoken about today, and that is hybrid cloud and data and AI and automation. Hybrid cloud, in a nutshell, is as clients want to have a more dispersed cloud architecture or business architecture, this is all about where do you decide to put the computer and the data. We definitely see in this region, for example, the topic of data sovereignty being very big, which says, I don't want to be outside the country and put my data. I want it to be in UAE, I want it to be in Saudi, I want it to be in Bahrain, I want it to be in various countries. But that doesn't mean you cannot operate in a hybrid world where you do use public cloud infrastructure for compute power, and you have your on-prem capability. And we have that all across the board, especially with our acquisition of Red Hat, which was a $34 billion acquisition 2 years ago, which really put us as the leader in the open hybrid cloud world, which is very, very relevant. Data and AI and automation is yet another area that is massively exploding right now, and that is because of the amount of data we generate as society and as businesses. Data, by the way, could be the credit card transactions we do on a daily basis. That's data. It could be the GPS signals on satellites, GPS signals on telco towers, around cell phone usage that we have on a daily basis. Imagine how much data there is in that. It could be, of course, the banking world, the healthcare world, the industrial, so on. As an example, in the oil and gas field, each well produces zettabyte of data, that's 1 plus 12 zeros, of data that is unstructured, and it's impossible for humans to analyze. You cannot hire enough people, no matter what they are, to look at that amount of data or the data that I described. So today, as we sit here, easily 80% of the data out there is unstructured and is underused. You could go as simple as, for all of us, the banking information that our banks have on us. I've been with the same bank for many, many years. Many times I don't even get promotions relevant to me. Now, that's a simple example. That's before you get to oil and gas and other things. Now, with artificial intelligence, this will only get better. Now, you have to do it, of course, ethically, where there is no bias because of race, gender, religion, political affiliation, all these things. But it's very doable. And we stand very strong on this ethics point of artificial intelligence usage. But it's very, very, very doable. And again, AI and automation is going to enable that. So again, when we look at the next phase, back to Abdullah's question or your question earlier, next phase of, you've got quantum, you've got high-speed networks, you have artificial intelligence coming. The future is frankly very exciting in terms of how IT, as we know it, is transforming our lives and the businesses we deal with.
Truly, we could just talk to you for hours. We have run out of time. Saad Toma, General Manager for IBM in the Middle East and Africa. Thank you so much. It's amazing. We're going to have you back to talk about the future, inshallah, as well.